All right, so we're back, and we're talking about some wrestling lessons, and actually, there's a lot more within this that when I did research on it, I raised a couple of eyebrows. And let's talk about MLW, because MLW is a weird one. Because not only did they come back as a full-blown promotion, but that was not their original intention. So, MLW ended their original shows in 2004. They were one of the companies that tried to capitalize on the WCW and ECW buyouts, where a lot of those wrestlers left to kind of combat that sort of...
just like everyone else did.
Right.
We talked about it a little bit earlier with the initial wave.
Right. But now here's the difference with MLW, because MLW came back originally not as a full-fledged wrestling promotion, but as a podcast network. Actually, they started doing this in 2017. Mm-hmm. Kind of the same thing what Conrad Thompson and Ad Free Shows is doing now. They actually did something very similar where they had a website where they hosted a bunch of different wrestling podcasts and they promoted them per week. So some of the shows were Kevin Sullivan's show, Jim Duggan had a show, MVP had a show, current executive of WWE Bruce Pritchard, AEW commentator Tony Schiavone had a show on there, and Eric Bischoff had a show on there. So it actually had a couple of heavy hitters. Now, in 2017, a little bit after that, a little bit after when they started this, they were talking about running some one-off shows, starting with MLW's One Shot. Now, One Shot, I am not kidding you, was supposed to be a one-off independent supercard like All In. It was literally the same principle. They had 200 fans in the building, and they had a 9-match card main evented by Shane Strickland taking on Ricochet. Oh shit, that would have been sweet. But other matches included MVP versus Sami Callihan, Maxwell Jacob Friedman versus Jimmy Yuta. It's not Wheeler Yuta, by the way. And Tommy Lawler, Jeff Cobb, and many more. The success of One Shot actually sort of predicated to where they wanted to do a weekly television show. So this is where that started in 2017. And now today, MLW is a show that Peanut Gallery and I are seriously considering adding to the lineup because they're doing so much. There's a lot of...
They're just not doing supercards. Well,
right.
They're doing supercards, but they're filming it as like regular shows. So.
Right. It's kind of weird, and it's really hard to distinguish the difference between them. Because, is it the supercard? Is it the same? Because they have a sort of mix where Ring of Honor would have, a definitive supercard, pay-per-view, etc., and then the TV tapings.
Right.
Same venue, different times. Great. But here, it's a little bit different. And MLW, once again, is a great company with... They have a decent budget behind them, and they're still making some big waves. Once again, creativity, great thing. And they actually own a lot of Lucha Underground, which I'm hoping they do something with soon.
They are Azteca Underground.
Yeah, Azteca Underground, but it's not like an independent show.
Well, of course not. You didn't think they were going to do that.
Oh, did I mix up my timing here? Oh, yes, I did. Okay, so let's talk about number 4. Sorry, my bad. All right, let's talk about WOW, Women's of Wrestling.
Nick.
Once again, we have a powerhouse with the current LA Lakers owner, Jane Brett, I think her name was, and also her involvement with Viacom, the original owner. They had a big supercard show, but the problem with their revival show back in 2019 was that there was a distinction like MLW where you didn't know what the supercard was compared to what that was. But this was a brand that died and it was revived and it's making waves within the scope of professional wrestling. This is where Tessa Blanchard is. This is where she has been. AJ Lee is the executive producer of this show, and constantly we get comments all the time wanting to talk about Women of Wrestling. Actually, Women's of Wrestling is our most requested add-on show of any other promotion above MLW is Women of Wrestling. So it might be something to talk about, and I'll be honest with you, I would actually want to include a all-women's event because it would be something very much different.
Subscribe to our Patreon.
Yes.
That's how you get it.
We'll watch that shit live, and it'll be awesome. Now, Impact is weird. I want to talk about this.
Impact never died.
It never died, but...
It got close.
It got close, but also the regime change.
Yes.
And I think because it didn't have to die to not be the same. We had TNA, where they went from so they had 4 distinct, eras of the show. So we had our Spike TV era.
Well, no, before that, the Spike TV era was the first era of syndicated television because before that, we were talking about the pay-per-views. Pay-per-views were a different era on its own.
Yeah, those were weekly pay-per-views. That was a much different era than weekly television. And that's what I want to talk about. WoW has weekly television on Viacom. And everybody else has weekly television, where Impact Wrestling did not at the time. And there wasn't really like a big Supercard event with TNA. It was just another show, where the Spike TV one was much different because that was around 2000. It was October 1st, 2005, and that was the debut.
And that was right after their first pay-per-view event.
Yep, that was their first. Monthly pay-per-view event.
Yeah, that was like Victory Road 2005, which I think was like November 05 or something
and then
like that. It was Victory Road.
Yeah, it was Victory Road. And then they did their first TNA Impact show on Spike TV. And their first big debut was Team 3D, which is now synonymous with Impact Wrestling, or TNA at that time. I mean, I'm sorry, when I think Bubba Ray and Devon Dudley, at least for my generation, I think them in TNA.
They're the Dudley Boys in WWE.
Right.
And ECW, but Team 3D and Impact.
They were much bigger stars then. So let's talk about a few years later, in 2008, they had their first live show in Las Vegas at the, the Red Rock Hotel.
Oh, really?
Yeah, in their live show where Booker T introduced the TNA Legends Champion, and they had a bunch of different things on there.
This was the Monday show, right?
Yes. This is when they went HD. This was not the Hogan-Bischoff era. That's what we're going to talk about here in a minute. The Hogan-Eric Bischoff era in 2010 started, and that was kind of when they did the four-sided ring. They went back to Thursdays. Well, they kind of did a couple of different things. But then let's talk about the current era, which started in 2017, which is the Anthem era. Because no matter who was
booking... the Owl. I'm just kidding.
because right now, isn't Impact still owned by the Owl?
Yeah,
they're still owned by the Owl.
They're still owned by the Owl.
They had a couple of different...
Yeah, I remember those days. I remember the days of fuck the Owl.
Right. They had a couple of different iterations of this era, and they finally started to click to where people are like, okay, that's fine.
They've reinvented themselves so many times.
Oh, they absolutely have. But at the same time, those are four distinct shows. We had,
TNA.
We had TNA on Spike. We had TNA HD. We had the Hogan Bischoff era, and then we had the Anthem era.
Right.
Those are the four for Impact, where a company that started in 2002.
Yeah, you missed a couple of
those are sub eras.
Right.
I'm talking about big era changes.
Yeah.
And that's what I wanted to focus on.
I would argue even within Anthem there were like three different iterations.
That's a whole other conversation.
indicated by 3 different colors of their fucking
right. The whole thing of Impact Wrestling can be literally its entire show.
We can make a series out of that.
Right,
shit.
we can literally, because this is a company that will not die. And
I'm glad. Okay, moving on.
Right, absolutely. I'm glad then. Now let's talk about finally WWE, because WWE has a distinction of having 2 different versions of what we're talking about. And let's talk about Saturday Night's Main Event. The original show aired May 10th, 1985, with 4 matches on the card. We had the U.S. Express and Ricky Steamboat taking on Nikolai Volkov, the Iron Sheik, and George Steele. Hulk Hogan defended the WWF champion against Bob Orton. Wendy Richter defended the women's champion against a fabulous Moolah. And the main event, I'm not kidding you, this was the main event. Junkyard Dog taking on Pete Doherty.
Cute.
That was the first Saturday night's main event. A show, when you say Saturday night's main event, you think wrestling. That's wrestling. And they did that for a very long time, up until 1992. Because the first era ended on that show, and it made a comeback in 2006.
You remember? Was it that long ago?
Yeah.
Damn.
It was 2006 was the second era of the Saturday Night's Main Event. That one had 5 matches on the card. We had Big Show defeating Carlito. We had John Cena and Triple H defeating Kurt Angle, Rey Mysterio, and Randy Orton, because that was around WrestleMania
22.
22?
No. Rey Mysterio, Randy Orton. That was...
No, it was Kurt Angle, Rey Mysterio, Randy Orton. That was WrestleMania 22.
Uh-huh.
And it was, because John Cena and Triple H, because JBL had another thing.
Right.
So we had Steve Austin over JBL in the beer drinking contest. You remember JBL pouring the beer through his shirt instead of drinking the beer? Stone Cold turning his head around. Oh, you gotta love it. But that was the reincarnation of Saturday Night's Main Event.
I preferred Superstars at the time.
Right. At the time.
That's how I discovered Adelita Sway, by the way.
Who?
Adelita Sway, the band, was through Superstars because the original theme song.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that was an Adelita Sway.
Oh, that's right. Oh, fuck.
I'm talking about a little bit of nostalgia there.
That's a juxtaposition. Mickey James and R-Truth. Or no, I'm sorry. Mickey James and Trish Stratus. I don't know why it went Trush. My spell check is amazing.
Wow.
Defeated Candice Michelle and Victoria, and the show's main event was Shawn Michaels went over Shane McMahon in a street fight.
Cool.
So, no, Shane McMahon defeated Shawn Michaels in a street fight. Excuse me.
Cool.
But at the same time, that was cool. And that ended, so the first show was in like early 2008. It ended on July 28th, 2008. And actually, in a couple of days, in 6 days, Saturday Night's Main Event is going to be making a comeback for house shows starting April 16th of this year.
Cool.
So there's a bunch of those shows that are going to be happening. There are going to be house shows that are going to be happening on Saturday, just like the OGs. And I think there's actually talks about those being streamed on Peacock as well. And I guess that was actually a request from Peacock to bring back that nostalgia-esque sort of thing. Which,
right, because people want to watch it.
Right. I don't think that's a bad idea, to be honest with you. If they're already doing a house show on Saturdays, might as well make it something interesting, right?
You don't have to be entrances for that. Anyways,
right.
Is that all you got?
Nope. Let's talk about one more. Let's talk about...
We have to talk about this, don't we?
Well, because here's the thing.
All right, so ECW, like back in 2006, when Paul Heyman was running things, was fine. Then all of the shit after,
right? So
after December that I wish I would forget.
Right. So WWE bought ECW, and it was dormant up until 2006, where that was when they made the announcement of bringing it back. But the problem is that was not the revival show of the ECW. It took them another month and a half to bring that back.
Yeah, because they do that until like September.
Yep.
No. Yeah.
So, in the 2006 edition of ECW One Night Stand, they had 7 matches on the card. Obviously with Rob Van Dam, winning the WWE champion. The night after, they brought back the ECW champion and gave it to Rob. But then we had our first ECW show, which obviously was absolute garbage, and where Sabu won a 10-man battle royal to become the next number one contender.
Yep.
He faced the Big Show because Rob Van Dam got popped for steroids. We had the Sandman beating up a zombie. All the fun stuff with that ECW. I will say,
man, this sounds like WWE in 2021.
Right? It kind of does. But at the same time, even though that first show of ECW was kind of lame, I liked the show because it felt so different. It felt very grungy.
It wasn't the WWE, let's put it that way.
Right. It wasn't the WWE. You had the originals. It was on a much smaller platform. There was still something different overall of that ECW. And I think that's kind of where I wanted to end it, because revival shows can take all different shapes and forms, from an actual death and revival like ECW, like Glow, to a reinvention where they have a big show to kick off that reinvention, like they did with Impact Wrestling, going to Vegas and introducing a bunch of shit, to, the ECW One Night Stand, where it was a physical property, and then they brought it back officially after the success of the One Night Stand show. And I want to talk about this because we had Supercard of Honor. Where it goes from now, we don't know. But
where it went from an independent wrestling promotion to AEW
light,
dark.
Right. It went to the light version of Bud Light. So
pretty much.
Now,
no, it's the light version of White Claw, because that's what Tony Khan likes to drink.
How? You really don't like Tony Khan, don't you?
I didn't say I hated Tony Khan. I just,
You're indifferent.
He's not my friend.
He's not your friend. He's not your buddy. He's not a guy.
Yeah, we're not friends on Facebook. He's not my friend.
I kind of want him to be. So, when we come back, let's talk about NXT Stand and Deliver.
Okay, we'll talk
about
that.
So, we'll be back.